Do you have reeds that don't respond very well, or are they stuffy? And you just don't know what to do? The reed might look good, but you've exhausted all your options. If you're having issues with stuffy reeds or reeds that don't respond well, then you'll want to make sure you watch this one because you might learn a tip or two to help you navigate some of those issues. So today we're going to talk about reeds that look good, but they are still too hard and effortful to play. So I got an email from one of my subscribers, and she was saying that her reeds look good and the measurements are good, the tip is thin, everything is proportionally the way it's supposed to be, but the reed is too hard and stuffy. So what do we do to help our stuffy reeds? Well, there are several things we can do to a reed that is already pretty far along. But there are also things we can do in the beginning stages when the reed is a blank, those initial scrapes that can really help set our reed up for success, that it's going to vibrate and not be stuffy. So I'll kind of talk you through a little bit of both ways. So we'll look at the diagram first. And if a reed doesn't peep, so like this, I'm not sure what this reed is doing. I started it last week on the road. It looks pretty long still, but let's see if it peeps. Okay, this reed peeps. It's got a bit of a rattly crow, which tells me it's too long. I bet I left this one on the longer side of my initial scrape. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's too long. It's just slightly over 72. All right, so this reed would need a clip and then refining in the tip. But if your reed, especially if it's this long, if you peep into it and you get all air and no peep, then okay, we need to check out the tip first, because the air enters through the top of the reed, through the tip, and then it goes into the heart. And that's kind of how the flow of air works. Now, that seems obvious, right? But if your tip is super thin and it's still not peeping, then there's something that's balanced incorrectly. A lot of times we work in the tip so much because we're taught the tip needs to be so thin, and it does. The tip really does need to be thin. But the tip and the heart, here to here, work together. So they have to be balanced. If the heart is super thick and the tip is pretty thin, the vibrations are going to get to here and then they're going to hit a wall and they're not going to want to go through and vibrate the rest of the reed. The heart is actually where the vibrations come from in the reed. You can definitely take too much out of the heart too and have too many vibrations. So we strategically take out of certain areas. If my reed is stuffy, I like to work right here where I've circled. That's kind of the blending area on both sides, just these two circles right here. That will give you more vibrations. Just a little goes a long ways. So I wouldn't take a big flat stroke like with your knife. I would not do this and go all the way up in one flat stroke. Instead, I would work at the top right here and slowly take itty bitty little scrapes back. Now I'm not truly scraping this reed right now, so I don't have my plaque in or anything. But in another video we can demo how I like to scrape in there as well. But that's where I would work. I would work right there in the corners. Leave the middle alone, unless you still have bark on it. So evaluate your own reed. Each reed is different, right? Okay, so you work in there and say it's still stuffy, or maybe it just made it flat. Well, does your reed peep now? Crow it again. Does it peep? My reed peeps, but it needs a little bit more. So I would just work in this outer layer of the tip right here. Avoid the center of the tip. You do want that to be the meatiest part, but it still has to flow. So if you turn your reed on its side like this, it should be nicely sloped. If you turn the reed towards you, it should be nicely sloped. You shouldn't see any big steps, like any big grooves right here. Okay, so once you get these vibrating together, it should peep and crow easily and play easier. Now, if the reed's too flat because you took cane out of here, you can clip the tip ever so slightly to bring the pitch back up. But if you clip the tip and the reed's already hard, it's only going to get harder. So just be mindful of that. Now, that is all fine and dandy, but to alleviate having to problem solve, it's easier if you set it up from the beginning. So set yourself up for success from the beginning, So take a blank. I want you to look at your blanks as well. I like to do a rough scrape on my tip and let it dry. Notice how this is all still bark, but the top of the tip, if you can see, I have scraped down. And I haven't scraped it super thin. I just took enough cane off so that my blank closes nicely. Look how nice and flat that is at the top. Sometimes when you shape cane, the cane can open up and kind of break in half a little bit almost. And while those pieces will still work, what that will do is your blank will be so open that it's going to be hard to get it to close down. So my advice is really perfect your blanks, number one, and get it to this point where it's nice and gradually sloped, and it has a great closure right here with no gaps where you can see into the reed. I'll see if I can find an example real quick while I soak this reed. Okay, I found an example of a shaped piece of cane, and I want you to notice how it's opened a little bit at the top. Can you see that? See how it's just, oops, sorry, I hit my camera. See how it's just, here, I'll use my, see how there's like a gap right here because the blades are already opening up. You can see it more too when we do this. Yeah, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and you could tie a blank with this reed, but it's going to be pretty open. If you compare that to my blank here, look at the difference. This one is much wider at the very top, at the opening. So you're going to struggle, or at least for me, I struggle if my cane is that open. So number one, a good blank with a nice closure up here. All right. Number two, let's set this aside. We are going to scrape our initial scrape. So before I move this, I'm going to work in the tip. I'm going to take all the bark off. You'll notice I'll leave my bark, the back of the bark right here. But I'm going to really focus in this area and getting those vibrations in. I'm going to leave the back primarily alone after I get the bark off, except I will scrape right here, because that helps to close the reed down and works for me. I find it works really well. Okay, so let's do this rough scrape together. And again, the goal of the rough scrape is to get the reed vibrating. You want your reed to vibrate before you put it away to rest. So notice, I'm starting on the left side of the heart, just getting that bark off, moving with the curvature of the cane. So notice I don't like to use the middle of my knife. I always use the top little section of my knife because I can be very, very pinpointed, and I feel like it gives me more control. But in the beginning, you don't have to be super pinpointed because you just need to get that bark off. Okay? Go to the other side. This reed's a little dry. Okay. So get the bark off. Working on the outer edges of the heart and then moving up a little bit. Notice I'm keeping my blend. I hope you can see that. I'm not defining the tip right now at all. I am making a blend between the tip and the heart, and I'm leaving the center of both pretty thick. I'm just getting the bark off. And the underbark, that bright yellow. So if You don't want any underbark on there either. And this has underbark still, so I will take that off. If you see me scraping around the middle, notice how I angle my knife onto the outer edges of the spine through the middle. But I'm not really taking a lot of cane off, I'm just getting that bark. So you still have to be careful. The way you scrape matters. We can talk about that in another video too. Okay, so we're working our way backwards. Still got underbark right in the middle, so I'll take that. We're not defining anything. We are just scraping. Oops, look at that, I messed up. That's okay. All I did was gouge a little bit out because my knife is a little sharp and my reed's a little dry. Okay. It's okay. I'm not going to worry too much about that. We'll just be careful with that side. And see, that just goes to show you, you don't have to be absolutely perfect. You be as detailed as you can, of course, and scrape as cleanly as you can, but we're only human, we're going to make mistakes. That doesn't mean the reed is toast. It just means we'll have to be a little careful around that section. Okay, I'm going to switch knives. All right. This will be better. I tend to like to scrape with this one more. Something about the feel of this knife. The blade is a little less wide. It feels good in my hand. Okay, so you'll notice most of the bark is off. Got a few little places right here of underbark, so I'm just going to take that. But I haven't really defined anything yet. I have not defined the tip. I have not defined the heart. Okay. Now, as you're doing this, after you get the bark off, I want you to gently press on the reed. You need to feel the flexion. What that means is the give, because you want your reeds to be flexible, and flexibility is another thing that can lead your reed to be too hard or stuffy if it doesn't flex at all. So if you gently press, it should give, and this one doesn't give enough, which means I go back to the top and I take a little bit more cane off. Notice I'm going back to the sides of the heart. That's where I'm focusing. And I see a whole lot of yellow right here, which is the underbark, which means that's got to go. Because that is holding some of this flexibility there. It's preventing it from coming out. So again, it can be nerve-wracking to scrape in the middle, but you got to get the bark off. Just be very careful how you do it. Switching to the other side here. Getting this bark. I see this place where I took a little gouge. That's okay, we're cleaning it up now. Okay. And some cane just grabs, the knife just grabs easily. This is one of those pieces, so I gotta be careful. All right, flexibility should be better now. Oh yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but it gives. Now that you have flexibility, the next step is to narrow the back of the spine. So where we talked about, I'm going to go right in here in the back of the spine, just a little bit. And that's going to help set this reed up balance-wise. So I'm just going to go, oh, okay, work in the back. There we go. And it's just a little bit, just a little scrape right along the side of the spine. I really leave this area up here where a lot of people call the windows. I don't do a whole lot there in the beginning because that's, to me, it's not where the vibrations come from. So I just narrow the back of the spine to help aid that flexibility, help the reed to be the right closure. And then I will go up here and just say, okay, this is where the bottom of my heart is. And just take a little bit of cane out, barely anything. I'm just kind of saying, okay, little scrape, a little scrape and get rid of that cane. And that's pretty much the outline here. Hope you can see. But we haven't defined anything in the tip of the heart. It's pretty nicely sloped here, you can tell. It's pretty thin right here. There's a good angle. And see that nice slope, how it's thinner and then it gets wider. If this is too thick, if you have not scraped enough before you clip the tip, and this slope is not gradual like that, then it's gonna be open and maybe a little hard and not vibrant. So I bet when I clip this open, it's gonna make some peeping noises, but I'm gonna take a little bit more. So you'll notice I do this slope before I even clip the reed open. Like the tip will be pretty thin. Okay, I love it. Let's clip it open and see if it peeps. All right, so what I do is I just take about 1 millimeter off there. I know it looks like a lot, but that's just because it's frayed at the edge there. All right, let's see what it looks like. That's about what you want. It's not too big. It looks pretty good. Nice slope. Okay, let's cry. All right, notice how it peeped. It's a little hard, but I did not put much effort in at all for that. Let me get my plaque. At this point, after you clip it open, do not let it dry yet. You have to work on the tip and continue to get that balance because we want this reed to crow before you put it away. Not all the way finished, but we want it to crow. And that'll set this reed up for success. Okay, so we put our plaque in just a little bit. And you'll notice when I tilt up, that tip is pretty thick. You can't even see the shading. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to go to the corner, just gentle movements. And then notice I actually go to that spot again on the side, the blend where the tip and the heart will be. Again, we haven't really defined it yet, but I want that blend to be great. So we work in the tippy tip and then we go back. Other side. Notice it's not a whole lot of cane coming off. And then I'm constantly moving with the contour of the reed here with my knife. I'm not making flat strokes. That helps to keep the reed, the curvature of the reed good. That integrity in check and balance. Okay, so I did a little bit on that side. You can see a little bit. And it's not going to be perfect. I don't want it to be perfect this first time because we want to make this reed over several days. Because if you make it over several days, it will be a better reed most of the time and it will last longer. And who does not want a reed to last longer, right? Okay, working on the corners. Working on the other corner, okay. And then again, you want it to blend, so I'm gonna go where the heart's on the side of the heart. Blend it in. Notice how I'm not just working in the tip, I'm working in the tip a little bit, and then I'm moving backwards onto the side of the heart. I really haven't done anything in the center. I'm just looking for where the thicker places are. And right now I see some underbark still, so I'm going to get that off very carefully because it's catching. Okay, other side. Okay, let's see what we look like. It's, I think, going to be a party favor right now because it's very long and it's going to vibrate very easily. All right, Let's give it a crow. Oh yeah, so at this point it is too long, as we knew, but we added so many more vibrations in that I'm going to clip it back another millimeter and see what it does now. Yeah, so we added so many vibrations and it's long that's why we're getting that party favor kind of rattle. And in the beginning, that is just fine. I always, after I clip it, I look at the tip. I'm like, is there anywhere I can take it? Any thick places? Okay. Now, this tip is not defined yet, and you can tell there's some unbalanced things, but we're going to get it more closer to finished length, and then we will set our tip. Okay, curl it. All right, clip again. Another almost a millimeter. And I check my closure. It's good. It closes from the outside in. Good. Okay, at this point, it's probably at 72. Let's check. Yeah, a little over. So we're still pretty long. Let's check the tip and the heart. Okay, okay. Just gonna work here to clean up this side that has some thick places still in the middle. All right, and then we just keep doing it. You work a little bit in the tip, sides of the heart, clip it. Work a little bit in the tip, sides of the heart, clip it. And you want to do this relatively quickly because we're just trying to get the foundation, the bones of the reed. You don't want the tip to be super duper thin here. You're mainly working to balance this tip heart blend. Okay. All right, notice I knew it was going to do that because I took a lot out. So I'm going to take a whole millimeter. Woo! Getting closer, guys. All right, at this point, we're probably 71 and a half, 72. At this point, I think it's okay to put your tip line in. Just kind of say where it's going to be, so I just score a little line. And really, the tip line just helps you to stay balanced. You're not digging out the cane in front of the line. You're just saying, this is where my tip is, this is where my heart is. And then the reed will look pretty and it'll be more balanced. And then from there, we'll see what the crow is. You want to try to leave this cane in front of the tip line. But I'll keep working on the heart here as well. I'm sorry, this is the tip, not the heart. So the sides of the tip, right here. But leave this area in the center. Try to leave that alone. All right, notice starting to get some nice shading. All right, let's see. Okay, it's got a nice opening, not too big. Let's give it a crow. At this point, it needs another clip. I'm not going to cut it super short, but I am going to cut about 1/2 millimeter. And we'll let it dry a little bit longer than finished length. Okay. let's see where we're at. Okay, so we're just over 71, we're 71 1/4, and our tip line is at 66, which is where we want to be. So what I'll do is just say, okay, any last places I want to clean up before I let it dry. And on my first day scrape reed, I usually like to leave a little more vibrations than it's ultimately going to need, because I find as it rests, it tends to calm down and the vibrations are not so wild when I come back to it. Okay. This one's kind of wild, I would say. At this point, my bark in the back is a little high, so I'm going to just take it back ever so slightly. All right, let's try it. I generally just like to try it for a second to just see what we're working with before I let it dry. I'm trying this with the knowledge that I know it's not going to sound like a finished reed, and that is totally okay. That's kind of what we want. We just want to make sure it's vibrating, and then we'll let it dry and we'll finish it up later. All right, guys, I hope that video was helpful. And as always, you can leave me some questions in the comments, or if you have anything else you'd want to work on or you're having problems with, let me know. I'd love to help you out. And yeah, stay tuned and we'll have another topic coming up soon. Bye.